Dragon Ball Z Kakarot quickly became one of my favorite Dragon Ball games when it was released back in early 2020. It's this beautiful blend of open-world RPG and the flashy, chaotic combat Dragon Ball is known for. It's become my go-to way to experience the series over again in recent years, and it's what I recommend to newcomers who don't have the time to give the series a proper shot. It's not perfect, but it's still a really solid way to experience Dragon Ball Z, especially with the recent next-gen updates to the game. Kakarot isn't the first Dragon Ball game to act as a recap for the main series. Honestly, most of the games fulfill that role. It's easier to count the games that don't follow the Z story than the ones that do, but that's not a bad thing. Each one may cover similar ground, but they each have their own unique gameplay styles and quirks that help set them apart from each other. But one that's always stuck out to me has been the Legacy of Goku series on the Gameboy Advance. The Legacy of Goku series is very similar to Kakarot, in the fact that they're both RPG retellings of the story of Z, but instead of being an open world game, these are top-down adventure games, more reminiscent of something like Zelda. The series has some high highs and some really low lows, but overall I'd say they're a solid experience overall, and do a lot to separate themselves from other Dragon Ball games, especially during the time that they were released. I don't see a lot of people talk about these games much anymore, so I thought I'd do just that. This is the Legacy of Goku. The Legacy of Goku series of games starts with humble beginnings, and by humble I mean complete dog shit. This first game is pretty painful to get through. In terms of plot, it covers from the start of Z to the destruction of planet Namek, which sounds like a lot until you realize that the game just cuts out any time Goku isn't on screen. The pacing of this game as a whole is just really baffling. Like, you start on Roshi's Island as you would expect. Gohan is kidnapped, and then Goku just kinda goes home, and then decides to meander around the forest for a little bit before confronting Raditz. There's a lot of points in this game where you're just sidetracked for no reason. Do you remember when Goku's stopped by a military base on his way to fight Vegeta? I sure do. Or the part where he has to solve a teleporting maze to fight the Ginyu Force? That shit was fire. Goku's walking speed in this game is so slow. It's like he's sinking into the ground with every step he takes. You also can't move diagonally, so getting around feels a lot more stiff than it should. You can also fly for a bit by pressing the R button, but this game is very inconsistent about where you can and can't fly, so it's more frustrating than it's worth. Honestly, frustrating is how I would describe this entire game. It feels like every design decision is actively working against the player. I don't know how they did it, but they made Goku, who's supposed to be an absolute unit, feel as weak as my will to live on a Tuesday night. Everything, and I mean everything, is stronger than you. Dogs, snakes, fucking clouds will kill you in this game. And when you die, you get to see this lovely PNG of Goku. Every single time. You take so much damage, it's not even funny. It feels like every enemy does at least a third of your health bar in damage, if not more so towards the end of the game. Every boss arena is littered with healing items because they knew you would take too much damage without them. But even then, you can only carry 6 of them at a time because Goku can't possibly carry any more. There's no hit stun in this game either, so you'll go to attack somebody and then get wombo comboed before you can even react. Everything is a pain in the ass to fight. That is, until you get the Solar Flare. Fuck the Ki Blast, fuck the Kamehameha, the Solar Flare is the strongest move Goku has. The Solar Flare will stun enemies for a limited time, meaning you can wail on them or use it to get some distance between you. This move is practically required because bosses have so much health in this game. I swear, even with this skill, it took me like 10 minutes of just running around in circles to kill Vegeta. Hey guys, you wanna help me? Oh god, oh god! Every other energy skill in the game is pretty much useless once you get the Solar Flare. They both do okay damage, at least I think they do. The game doesn't have any damage numbers or health bars. But they take way too much energy and charge time, meaning once you're out of ki, you just have to sit there and hope that the enemy doesn't come running at you. Oh god, oh fuck! If you want to beat the game, you basically have to grind to the max level. Even at the max level, Frieza deals so much damage that it's almost unfair. Thankfully, the max level is like 25, so it's not too much grinding, but I shouldn't have to be max level just to stand a chance at finishing the game. The game is only around 3 hours long, but it was so mind-numbing that it felt like it was 10 times longer than that. It's a slog to get through, which is a shame because it's based on one of my favorite parts of Z, so I hate to see it get shat on so hard. I feel bad being so harsh on this game, because according to interviews with the developers, the game was made with pretty much no budget. They didn't even get the Dragon Ball license until the game was almost finished, so it was basically just a passion project. But regardless of those working conditions, the fact of the matter is that the game is just not fun to play. Despite a lot of negative reviews, the game would go on to sell 1.2 million units, which is insane considering the quality of the game. However, on the bright side, this means that the dev team was able to greenlight a sequel, and with an actual budget they were able to make an actually good game in the form of the Legacy of Goku 2. The Legacy of Goku 2 is an improvement on the original in just about every way. It feels like an actual video game, the glow-up is insane. This game covers the Android and Cell sagas, and somehow manages to be double the length of the first game, despite technically covering less ground in terms of plot. The improvements are apparent from the moment you start the game. Not only can you move diagonally, thank God, but your walk speed is increased from the original game, and you can even dash to go faster, which is a huge addition. The game also adds a bunch of different playable characters. You'll be switching between Gohan, Piccolo, Vegeta, Trunks, and Goku at various points in the game. It's funny, for a game titled The Legacy of Goku, you only play as Goku for a really small portion near the end of the game, which lasts only like an hour. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but I find Goku's character portrait oddly terrifying. He just keeps staring at me, menacingly. And I don't like it. Each character plays pretty identically for the most part, but what sets them apart are the variety of different special moves each one has. Not all of them are winners, but each character has at least 2 or 3 unique key attacks which are all extremely flashy and can deal big damage. Each character also has a unique heavy melee attack, but I'll be honest, I didn't use these a whole lot. You have to hold the button in the middle of a combo for them to activate, and I found that they missed more often than they hit. Every character also gets their own transformation, which increases the amount of damage you do for a short time. They range from the iconic Super Saiyan transformation to even a unique one for Piccolo after he fuses with Kami. This one's really funny to me because he just takes off his weighted clothes to power up. But this form has a unique benefit in the form of health regeneration, which is sick. To use these transformations, you have to wait until this yellow bar is filled up, and then you have to find somewhere safe to transform, because if you're hit during the middle of the transformation, it'll be cancelled. I really like this mechanic because it gives you a little more thought into transforming, rather than just doing it as soon as the bar is filled. You also have to be mindful of the energy meter, since the transformation eats away at it over time, which can leave you a sitting duck if you run out in the middle of a boss fight or something. This game also has a couple other various quality of life improvements to the combat, such as adding damage numbers, health bars, and even adding hit stun on enemies and bosses. Enemies and other environmental obstacles can also drop health and energy items, which makes healing far less frustrating than in the first game. These seemingly small additions go a long way to making the game more tolerable and fair, and better indicate to the player whether or not they're strong enough to tackle certain obstacles. When outside of combat, the game takes an approach closer to Zelda with its exploration. The areas are surprisingly big, with plenty of enemies and items to find around every corner. Littered around each area are various capsules, ranging from these golden ones that are scattered by Dr. Briefs, to these stat capsules that strengthen the character you use them on. There are also various side quests scattered throughout the game, most of which will reward you with either capsules or a way to progress. For example, if you find these hidden Namekians scattered around the world, they'll reward you by taking you to New Namek, where you can even fight Cooler as a super boss. Why he's chilling on New Namek is beyond me, but hey, you do you I guess, it won't matter much longer anyway. Overall, I can't stress how much of an improvement this game is over the original. It's not the longest game, and it's pretty easy all things considered, but it's a blast to play through even today. One thing that really sticks out to me about this game is its music. A lot of it is bit crunch versions of the Faulkner score, which I think is really cute. It's surprisingly rare to see actual music from the show in these games, so I think it's really cool whenever they manage to sneak it in. If you haven't played this game already, I highly recommend giving it a shot. It's a huge love letter to the franchise and one of my favorite Dragon Ball Z games, even all these years later. Despite being a pretty big fan of the second game as a kid, I hadn't heard anything about its follow-up, Boo's Fury, until somewhat recently. After finally playing it for myself, I can kinda understand why. Boo's Fury is one of the strangest games I've ever played. It's not bad by any means, but there are a lot of decisions in the game that really don't make a whole lot of sense to me. Let's start with the positives, because there is a lot I like about this game. For starters, this game features an equipment system, which lets you equip items that can improve your stats and even grant various other attributes. For example, there's items that make you take less damage from energy attacks, items that increase the amount of experience you earn, and even items that increase the amount of stat points you earn while leveling up. Oh yeah, that's another addition. Instead of getting fixed stat increases when you level up, you can now choose which stats to level up individually, which adds a lot of customization to each character. Some characters can also fuse now, which not only makes them stronger, but also gives both characters EXP at the same time. By collecting certain collectibles, you can even unlock Gochita for the post-game, which is sick as fuck. The game also incorporates some of the movies into its plot. Broly kinda just shows up out of nowhere in the middle of the game and then fucks off afterward, but the Fusion Reborn plot is added into the narrative right after Goku goes back to Otherworld. It's kind of impressive how seamlessly it's added in. While there are a lot of other improvements from the last game, there's also some weird choices that make it feel like a step backwards. For example, the Super Saiyan transformation now creates its own separate energy meter, which does nothing but make the transformation more spammable than it already was. I also think it's way too easy to get overleveled in this game. In fact, you're kinda pushed by the game itself to become overleveled. See, Legacy of Goku 2 had these level gates that locked you out of an area until you were a certain level. These gates would usually block off areas with really strong enemies, and while there were some that blocked off story progression, mostly for boss fights, a majority of them blocked off secret areas. So these areas are mostly used for fighting items and grinding, which isn't a bad thing since the game was balanced around it. In Boo's Fury, however, these gates are everywhere, lots of times blocking off story progression at levels you'd have no way of reaching at that point. You gain control of Goku after the martial arts tournament to chase after Babidi, but the moment you go up one screen, you're blocked off by a level gate that's higher than what Goku's level starts at. Now this wouldn't be a problem if the enemies on the other side of the gate were stronger to compensate, but they're just as strong as the enemies you fought to get through this gate anyway. The level pool is really high in this game, it goes all the way up to 200, and the enemies give off so much XP that you only have to defeat 2 or 3 enemies at a time to level up, maybe even less if you have weighted equipment on. This, on top of the spammable transformations, make your characters extremely overpowered extremely quickly, to the point that most bosses will crumble in a matter of seconds. They also made energy attacks do pitiful damage for a majority of the game. They get stronger towards the end, but this results in a lot of fights boiling down to just slapping the shit out of every boss. I don't know if I just had bad luck or what, but some bosses would just not fight back sometimes. They would just sit there and let me beat on them for the whole fight. It sucks because there's a lot of really cool skills and energy attacks that were added in this game, such as Vegeta's Big Bang, or any of Vegito's moves, but there's never really a chance to make use of them. What this results in is the game being far too easy across the board, which is a shame because there's a lot of areas that are really well designed and fun to explore, but everything else just feels dull due to how insanely overpowered you are. There's a part where you have to stall Boo for Goku to charge the Spirit Bomb, and I was dealing so much damage to Boo that he eventually just stopped taking damage altogether, forcing me to run in circles until the timer was finished. At the end of the day, I think I would still recommend Boo's Fury if you enjoyed the Legacy of Goku 2, but it's crippled by the weight of its own mechanics and painfully easy difficulty, which is a shame since its predecessor was such a joy to play. Not the first one though, fuck that game. The Legacy of Goku franchise is a series of ups and downs. While at its lowest point, the game makes me want to throw my Game Boy at a wall and shatter it into a million pieces, the best of the series rivals that of the best Dragon Ball games in existence. While the games might not be groundbreaking compared to some more recent games like Fighters and Kakarot, for the time and platform they were released under, I think they're pretty impressive. The last 2 games at least. In a lot of ways, they set their groundwork for those later games to flourish. From their expansive interpretations of iconic locations, to the flashy transformations and energy blast. If you haven't already, I highly recommend Legacy of Goku 2 and Boo's Fury. They're fun little games that are more than worth your time and won't overstay their welcome. Just please stay far, far away from the first game for the love of God. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you haven't already, consider liking and commenting on the video, as well as subscribing to the channel. It really helps me improve my content going forward. The next video is going to be on Persona 5 Strikers. The Persona series is near and dear to my heart, and I feel like I don't see a lot of discussion around Strikers in particular, so I wanted to try and throw my hat into the ring. Feel free to follow me on Twitter for any updates on future videos or whatever else I decide to post about. Anyway, that's about it for me. Have a good one.